G'day guys, how are you going? Now today we are going to be doing an in-depth review of the 2020 Veloster Turbo. Fun fact, the Veloster Turbo here in Australia is the only right-hand drive Veloster made in the world. And we're gonna be finding out what the real issue with that is. Now, as always, we're gonna start by taking a look at the exterior of the Veloster Turbo. Then we're gonna move on to the interior and see how it drives. And finally, we're gonna end on, is it worth buying? Make sure as well, if you do enjoy the video, go down there right now and hit the thumbs up button because it really helps the channel out. And go down there and subscribe. We have really cool car reviews coming every single week. So it's definitely worth it. But anyway, on to the review. The front of the new Veloster Turbo is so bold, so masculine, so vibrant. I really like it. It does kind of look like a fish, but that's really the whole Hyundai design language, so I don't really mind it. There are lots of sharp edges, sharp creases, and sharp lines. It really suits the character of this sporty car that Hyundai is going for. Now, the headlights are decent. They have the old LED style that I think is intentional because the previous generation Veloster had a very similar style, and Hyundai definitely could have put a single LED line like in the Supra that I reviewed, and you can click up there to watch that review. My biggest complaint about them is, although they are LED headlights, when you put on the high beams, they are halogen, and that is a really old technology and old look. I think they could have done a lot better with that. I don't really mind it because most people who buy a Veloster will have no need for high beams other than to flash people, so it's not a big deal, but it could have been better. I do really like the front splitter though, and the little red line that goes to the bottom of the splitter. It's a cool look and certainly helps with the sporty aesthetic. And it has functional air vents on the side of the front. I can't believe it. I guess it's to cool the brakes or really just to look good, but at least it's functional. Big props for that. Overall, I really like the look of the front. And the side of the Veloster is iconic. It's really its unique value proposition. You have different cars depending on the side you look at. If you look on the right-hand side here in Australia anyway, you have the coupe side where it's just a nice sporty coupe, and then you get onto the left-hand side of the car and all of a sudden you have a hatchback with two doors instead of the one door on the right-hand side. So yes, there is different size dooring as well. The right-hand side door, the driver's side door, is substantially longer than the passenger side door. But then the passenger side doors, there are two of them for that added practicality. Looks-wise, there's a lot going on with the side of the Veloster. Instead of having real fender flares like the old Veloster, it has cut-in fender flares, which it cuts into the body panel, but still looks like an outward fender flare. It's a cool, unique trick that a lot of car manufacturers are doing now. Best of all, though, are the saw blade wheels. These rims on the side, they are really edgy and quirky, but they work so well. It looks like the car is always in motion, and that's really cool. Now, you do only get these wheels on the Turbo Premium spec, but it's worth it because you also get Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tires, which for those who don't really care much about tires, trust me, it makes a huge difference in terms of grip and just an overall better driving experience. This side is also where you really get a good look at the Tangerine Comet paint job, which is such a weird name, but they have very weird names for all of their paint colors. And not only is this orange paint that cool, you also get the Phantom Black roof, which is an option, but well worth it because it just looks so cool. If you're going to be buying a Veloster, get it in a cool color because quirkiness, coolness is what this car is all about, and that is definitely worth it. The rear again is cool and quirky, and it's a big departure away from the bug-eyed look of the last Veloster, which, although I didn't mind too much, I think that this just takes it to a really new level. I love the taillights so much. They are really cool. They're very similar to the Mitsubishi ASX that I reviewed, and you can click up there to watch that one. And those mimicked the Lamborghini Huracan's taillights. So they're definitely borrowing some design language from some supercars, but it doesn't matter. It's a cool look. I love it. Give it a bit of pep. Goes. And then there is a giant diffuser down the bottom of the Veloster, which helps to give it, again, a sporty look with two exhaust tips down the bottom, which sound just like this. and we'll get more into the driving experience shortly. Overall, I love the way that the Hyundai Veloster looks, but I also think it's something that you either love or you hate. So let me know down there right now, what do you think of the Hyundai Veloster? Is it a car that you love or is it a car that you hate? Also let me know, do you think it looks better than the previous generation? I'm curious to see what you guys think. Go down there right now. Now, moving on to the interior, I want to start with the good, and there is a lot of good. First of all, the layout in here is gorgeous. It looks fantastic. Everywhere you look is great. Not feel, we'll get onto that shortly. But the overall layout where everything is placed is really good. And the inclusions you get here in the Turbo Premium are absolutely fantastic. You get all the tech you could ever want. You get heated seats, you get cooled seats, you get a heated steering wheel, you get a heads-up display, you get adaptive cruise control, you get lane keep assist. Literally everything you want tech-wise, you get in the car. And then we have this steering wheel. And for all my long-time subscribers out there, you know how much I care about my steering wheel. And this steering wheel is honestly one of the best steering wheels I have ever used. Now, it's not the best feeling. The leather is a bit soft and squidgy, and it's not the best there. But in terms of its functionality, it is incredible. You can do everything from the steering wheel, from controlling all the media you could ever want to control to controlling all the cruise control systems and safety systems. It's all done through the steering wheel, and that's fantastic. It means you don't have to take your hands off the steering wheel to operate parts of the car, except for the climate controls, which themselves are really good. It does have some pretty cheap feeling sport paddles on there to upshift in this automatic variant, but it's not the end of the world. At least they work and they're pretty responsive. Speaking of functionality, the 8-inch infotainment display is absolutely fantastic. It is one of the best in the business because it just works. It's got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, it's very responsive, comes with navigation if you really don't want to use your phones and navigation, digital radio, all of that. It is fantastic. The one thing I don't like though is that it doesn't have a home button, so you can't just go back to the home menu when you want to. You have to click radio or navigation or something else, and it's quite frustrating, especially when you're using Android Auto, for instance, and you want to get back, you can't easily. But I've learned to live with it, so it's not the end of the world. It also has a heads-up display, which is really good. It changes when you put it into sport mode. It has the rev counter on it, but otherwise it's functional enough. It shows just enough information for you. It's high definition. It does go onto a retractable glass panel, which isn't the best solution out there. It is a lot better just to project it onto the glass windscreen, but at least it's there, and you can hide it very easily if you want, and it retracts back down into the dashboard. It's cool. The gauges as well are pretty good. Now, I usually don't like gauges that are digital, but these ones are okay because in the center there is an LCD display that presents more than enough information. Seriously, it's got boundless ends of just information overflow, and that's awesome. You can see almost whatever you want through there, so I don't really care. And then there are these seats, which are absolutely fantastic. As I said, they are heated, they are cooled, plenty of adjustment. It is automatic on the driver's side and manual on the passenger side. Doesn't really matter. They're great for longer journeys. They have good lumbar support. Big fan. Oh, and the quality of them is fully leather. Feels really nice. Now let's get on to the bad, and the first is the quality of the materials. Now, I did say that in here the layout is fantastic and the looks are great, but the quality is awful. It is hard plastics absolutely everywhere. It sucks. It was the exact same on the old Veloster, and it's just the same here. It's just awful everywhere. Like, not one place except for here, and even here it's like a shite plastic. It's not good. The seating position as well is not great, and it's probably because of the steering wheel. The seat has fine adjustability. It's that I can't move the steering wheel forward enough for it to be comfortable. I have to sit pretty close to the pedals for me to be comfortable with the steering wheel, and that is not great. And I'm only 5'11", so guys over 6 foot, you might struggle. And then there is just visibility, which is awful. It manages to be even worse than the last Veloster. It's quite hard to see out of the rear window, and there are huge blind spots everywhere. But I guess that's the price you pay for aesthetics. Now, quickly talking about the rear seats, and yes, there are rear seats. Now, there are only 2 seats back there, which is the exact same as the previous generation Veloster. There is okay leg room, better headroom than the last for sure, and you don't get decapitated like you do in the last Veloster, because the boot now opens behind your head instead of over your head. It does lack amenities. There are no USB ports back there. There's no air vents back there, and that is a bit of a shame. And then there's boot space, which manages to be even smaller than the last generation. It's probably because they moved it back so you don't get decapitated, but it's 303 liters of boot space back there, and there is a giant load lip. So if you do have a bad back and you're regularly carrying heavy stuff from your car, this might not be the best option for you. Now let's get on to how the Hyundai Veloster drives. Now the Hyundai Veloster has the exact same 1.6 turbocharged engine that was in the last Hyundai Veloster. And it puts out 150 kilowatt of power and 265 newton meters of torque. And I'll tell you what, it's a pretty fun ride. And it's not the exact same that you will find in the Kia Cerato or the Hyundai i30N line. And that's because it has an overboost feature. So between 2000 and 4000 RPM, and only in sport mode, you'll get a little bit more power. And you can feel it. It's pretty good. Now, it's definitely a warm hatch and not a hot hatch. But for 99% of people out there, they would probably think that it is a hot hatch. Now, the biggest issue by far about the way that the Hyundai Veloster drives is its 7-speed dual clutch transmission. Now, dual clutch transmissions are notorious for being a bit clunky, especially on takeoff, but German counterparts like Volkswagen, BMW, they make awesome transmissions. This transmission is just so unpredictable that it's really not a great transmission. 99% of the time, it's fine. But sometimes you put your foot down and it's like nothing happens, literally. Sure, if you have it in sport mode, you warm the car up for a bit and you put the transmission into sport mode too, you will get better performance. But you get so much better performance out of cars like the Volkswagen Polo or the BMW 1 Series, both of which I have reviewed, and hopefully I have enough of these, you can click up there to watch those. And they are just worlds better at changing gears, at being able to predict what you're doing with your foot. Because sometimes you'll have the car in sport mode, sometimes you'll have the transmission in sport mode, and you'll put your foot down and nothing happens. It's so odd. It is a better idea, if you can, to go with the manual transmission. It is just a better transmission because obviously it's much more predictable. You're changing the gears yourself. It is more fun, and you also save $3,000, and we'll get onto that shortly as well. Now, other than the transmission, which could be better, the driving experience is absolutely fantastic. You know, you put your foot down and there's loads of grip and it just goes. And that's all thanks to the Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tires, which are absolutely worth getting in the premium, the turbo premium spec. Of course, it is front wheel drive and there is a lot of power going to the front wheels, but you don't get much torque steer or anything like that. It is quite planted. You do get a bit of tire spin, especially when the tires are cold, but that just goes to show that there's a lot of power going through the front wheels. Handling is superb, and this is the best thing about the old Veloster. It's the best thing here. In normal mode, it is absolutely fine. When you put the car into sport mode, it goes to a whole nother level. It is obviously artificial, but it just makes the steering so much more precise. You feel like you could turn on a dime. And the suspension as well is just incredible. It is so well tuned for the Australian market. Hyundai Australia do a lot to make sure that the cars are individualized for their markets, and here in Australia it is fantastic. It goes over bumps so well and yet corners so well too. And it is worlds better than the last generation Veloster, which was really stiff, especially over bumps. So yes, overall the driving experience is great in the Veloster. It's really good, but the dual clutch transmission isn't all there. There is an 8-speed transmission coming to the Veloster N in the US. We don't get that here in Australia, but I'm really hoping that they put that 8-speed dual clutch transmission into the new Veloster, not just the N. I think it would make the driving experience so much better. Guys, I'm gonna jump in here for a second because I forgot to say this in the video. Even if Hyundai does put in the 8-speed transmission into the other Velosters, not just the N,
I don't think we're going to be seeing it here in Australia. And this is a really big issue, that Australia is the only right-hand drive market that gets the Veloster. In my mind, it doesn't make any economic sense because they took it away from the UK. In my mind, it just doesn't make economic sense. Australia only has 26 million people. The last Veloster sold 15,000 units. This Veloster has been selling really poorly. And this is just my thoughts here, but I really don't think that we're going to be seeing another Veloster. Even a facelift, I think would be hard pressed to get because they have to recreate the tooling, things like that. If they make facelifts, changes to the doors, they have to change the tooling. And so even if they bring in that 8-speed transmission, I don't think we're going to keep getting the Veloster here in Australia, and that's a shame. The only reason that they would do it is not financial sense, because it makes zero financial sense. It's because they want to have a certain brand image here in Australia, being sporty and things like that. But in this economic climate, I don't know. Back to the video.
And that kind of brings me back to the point of, is it worth it? And with this spec, with this paint job, with the black roof and the automatic dual clutch transmission, this Veloster here is just under 49,000 Australian dollars. That is a lot of money for a Hyundai Veloster. But the premium spec is well worth it. So that's the trim you want. You want the turbo premium. For 49,000 Australian dollars in this turbo premium, guys, with all of its optional extras, I really don't think it's worth it. I would rather spend $3,000-$4,000 more on the new Mini Clubman S, which I reviewed, and get a car that is faster, better sounding exhaust, way better interior. But if you were to de-option that automatic transmission and save yourself $3,000, well, $45,000 is actually a much better proposition. Might not sound like a huge saving at that amount of money, but it is when you compare it to competition at that same price point. Then you get a fully loaded car that has really great performance and drives really well, engaging to drive. The manual transmission is fantastic. But at $49,000, I can't recommend it. But let me know what you guys think. Do you own a Hyundai Veloster? Let me know down there what you think of how it drives. The Veloster N, a whole different story. And I will be driving an i30N in a couple of weeks, so that review will be out very, very soon, and it'll be very interesting to compare to this car. But anyway, guys, if you did enjoy the video, go down there and hit the thumbs up button. It really, really helps the channel out. Comment down there below because A, it helps the channel out, B, I respond to all of your comments, and it's cool to have a little community. And definitely subscribe if you are new for more cool car reviews just like this. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.